We use these cameras in real environments with real stakes on the line with real clients, and sometimes in staged situations such as this one with my assistant walking to and away from camera reluctantly like a police lineup. And look, I can't speak to other people and what they're pointing it at and the inanimate objects that might give them challenging results. All I can say is that in our time, this autofocus system with respect to humans does not lag behind any modern autofocus system in all of our tests so far.
I can't let you go, baby. I just wanna tell you that. No, 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 no. Yeah. All of my friends say, girl, you better take care. 'Cause that man is trouble, you best beware. And though deep down, I know I might be headed for teardrops. Now that you got me started, I just can't stop. No.
So I wanted to do a different kind of video where I'm just gonna talk into the lens here about one specific thing, and that is autofocus with respect to Fujifilm cameras, because they're not really known for being a leader here, right? I mean, it's great when you want to use single point focus to grab one picture, but when you want to rely on continuous autofocus, you get mixed results. If you have a great light source and you're sitting and you're not moving and there's not a lot of low contrast items around, sure, it'll get the focus most of the time. But even in these environments, sometimes the autofocus will hunt with Fujifilm cameras. It's one of these things where if it happens enough, you stop using it. Kind of like Siri or Maps or really any first version of Apple software. It instills this lack of confidence that makes you hesitant, and especially when you're an enthusiast or a professional, well, you're reluctant to rely on it. You want to move into something that can give you the results you need, especially when there is something on the line. Back, this is now what, 2-3 months now, when we were initially talking about this product from Fujifilm, and they mentioned that it was going to be a significantly improved algorithm for autofocus. I was hopeful, but I didn't want to get too excited, right? You know, Canon and Sony are really leading the charge here, and having used those in different environments for different productions, they set a standard. It's just something that you can count on 9 times out of 10, if not more. So I had this wait and see approach, all right? Send me this thing and I'll find out for myself. And I wanted to do this in a way that, like most of these videos, is based on my shoots, my productions, the actual work that I do. I wanted to take this camera across multiple environments, how I shoot it, really get rough and tumble with this thing, and just figure out, could I count on it or not? And the answer is yes. I can count on the XH2s autofocus. Right away, I went into the settings to find out, where is the sweet spot for me. And for me, turning down the sensitivity and the speed, it's more akin to the style that I shoot. I don't want this jumpiness to the footage. I really want it to be smooth and gradual. And I want the camera to know that, hey, don't just jump to the next subject very easily, right? Focus on the item that's largely in the center of the frame unless I move the joystick in a different direction. And in my style of shooting, it worked way better than any Fujifilm product that I've ever used. The square that highlights the eye, the face, the object, the subject, whatever it may be, it felt way more stickier than before, where it could focus in even lower light situations and it would just stay there. Now, one thing I noticed is that sometimes it would feel a little too jittery and I'd have to bring the autofocus speed down, and even then it felt like it was jumping between eye and face, or eye and eye, unless I told it otherwise. But when I went back and looked at the footage, it lacked that hunting hesitancy that previous Fujifilm cameras had. It was maintaining the focus throughout. So even though the processor and sensor were moving between eye, face, or eye and object, it still maintained the focus where it wasn't just shifting randomly. In a situation like this where I'm recording, voiceover, this is actually being recorded on the X-T4, an X-T4 will perform incredibly well. You know, if there are some more low contrast situations, or maybe if I'm wearing the wrong shirt, there are times where it will hunt, and maybe even this editing, I'll notice where it's hunting. In these situations, the XH2s never failed me. When I took it out into a bright sunny day, didn't fail me there. When I used this moving from room to room in my house with shifting light, it still maintained focus. When I was using this at a concert, behind the scenes, it was incredibly reliable. And even through the haze and mist of a live concert, it was still able to track and maintain focus on the subject. And you didn't hear the whirring of autofocus motors. That was very impressive to me. The biggest difference that I found was the visual indication of what was in focus. When I look at the Sony a7 IV or the Alpha 1, when they say the eye is in focus, it's there and there is no flickering to it, and it just stays there until the eye is completely gone and it'll go to the next subject. When I look at the Fujifilm, there is always a little bit of like sporadicness around the eye. It's kind of staying there. Sometimes it'll flicker off and on, but it is way more consistent than the X-T4 from a visual indication standpoint. I'm just talking about what you see on the back of the LCD. However, again, when you look at the footage, well, at least in my case, it was always in focus. Now, I don't think they have any sort of drag to touch focusing mechanism. I didn't notice that. So if it's there and it's hidden, well, that'll be a surprise to me and I'll address it in a future video. But what I did appreciate is that I could reliably use the back LCD and tap to what I want to focus on during a live video recording. Where if I had two subjects, I'd frame up, and if I had two subjects, based on who was talking, I could just tap between them and the camera would shift focus between them. And especially when you have that focus speed down, it has a bit more of a, well, I hate to use the word, cinematic feel to it. It felt more natural, similar to what, you know, the cinematic focus mode that Apple introduced in their new iPhones. This wasn't something that you could rely on previous Fujifilm cameras. So I have to say, for all intents and purposes, they're on the right track. Now here's the thing, this camera is still a pre-production model that we're using with the latest beta software that they have, and they're working on it and they're polishing it, and by the time the camera ships, I think it'll be significantly better than what it is now. But where it is now is head and shoulders above where existing Fujifilm cameras are at. It's gotten significantly better to the point where I could rely on it. I found myself using this in continuous autofocus mode more times than not. In fact, the only time I was using it in manual focus is when I was using manual focus lenses. And I'm sure that will change in certain situations when I need to actually lock off the focus for a subject. But for now, maybe it was because I was feeling a little bit more daring with this camera. I wanted to find the breaking point. My sample unit worked incredibly well. And you know, at the time of recording, I don't know what anyone else is saying or what their experiences are. I am hearing of some issues that people are having with the beta software and some lenses. I can only speak to my experience right now and how I shoot it and what I use it for. So I'm curious to see what other people's results are, and also trying to see if I can replicate their issues if that is the case. I'll tell you right now, what Fujifilm is doing with autofocus is significantly better than what they've done in the past. And I think it's something that if you are that enthusiast or professional, you're gonna appreciate that. You're really gonna feel like they have leapt ahead in this department. So there's my thoughts. I just want to make this quickish video talking about one specific thing, autofocus, right? Because that's the one people like to harp on with Fujifilm, and people want to know, how does this compete with the other big players in the market? From what I'm experiencing, it performs incredibly well. It keeps up with the leaders of the pack. The only place it lags behind right now is the visual indication. But again, when you look at the footage, it's in focus and it's performing incredibly well. And I like to think that we're using these things and pushing these things a lot harder than some people might be using them. And I've tried to just throw every kind of situation I could at it, and it has impressed me. It has impressed me quite a bit. So I can't wait to test it out even further. More importantly, let me know what questions you might have. Whether it's autofocus or something else entirely, let me know what questions you have in the comments down below so I can address them or put my thoughts together in the future videos. As always, my name's Gajan. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.